Yeah. Yeah. So one of my favorite philosophers to listen to is Alan Watts. And a very memorable thing that he used to speak about was something along the lines of the reason that you are not better is because you continually are trying to get better. And the whole premise of this, it was like a really big spiel. I can't remember off the top of my head everything he mentioned, but the whole gist of it was, trying to put your own development in someone else's hands and thinking that that person knows better than you, or that you think that they have some answer to your questions, and that they can fix all of your problems, right? And he made the analogy of a monkey reaching into the ocean and saving a fish from drowning, and then putting that fish on the land and being like, hey, look, I helped you, I prevented you from drowning, even though that we know that fish actually need to live in water. And I found that quote very, very interesting, and just his whole philosophy of self-development in general, I found quite interesting as well. If you were to sort of summarize my interpretation of his work, he would be one to simply find joy in just the mundane that you do from day to day. And I think all of us align with that quite nicely too. Instead of just being like, oh, I wish this lockdown would end, this is the worst thing in the world. It's like you're in lockdown with like internet. This is probably the best time ever in the history of the world to be locked down in. You know what I mean? Imagine being locked down in medieval times. You literally had nothing to do, except like wash your laundry and whatever they used to do, which was not fun, right? But his whole thing was, find joy in the simple things in life of, washing the dishes, make it meditative, make it, can you wash your dishes a little bit better than what you did yesterday, or whatever it is. It was finding satisfaction in just the simple day-to-day things versus thinking that you need to achieve some big, massive goals. And you think that's going to make you super happy. And don't get me wrong, we're all about goals as well. But that's what we do. But to think that once you reach a certain point that you're just going to be content and happy, yeah, it's never.
Well, it's the shift that we've been talking around growth versus goals, and not being too attached to the outcome. So I started a daily blog this year just to try and get better at my writing, because I want to get better at writing. So I thought there's no better way to get better than just write every day. And the goal is to hit publish every day and just make it a daily habit. And the one I wrote about today was you only have the right to the work, because comes from I don't know if you guys read the Bhagavad Gita, but there's a passage in there where Krishna tells Arjuna, he says, you only have the right to the work and not the fruits of the labor. The fruits of the labor, or the reward, isn't in your hands. It isn't your right to have. All you have the right to is the process and the work, and actually just turning up every day and putting in that work. And when you take away that pressure of the outcome and the pressure of the result or the growth or the improvement, and just put the pressure on just doing the work, it makes it a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Anything you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, a lot of people I think would think that's a cop out. It's like, oh, well, you don't have any goals to master this and that. It's like, no. If you take that exact same approach to your fat loss goal, or whatever it is, you're going to be far more successful in the long term, because you're not only going to lose that weight, but you're also going to keep it off, because you've mastered the day to day. You've mastered the mundane. And yeah, as you were just saying, that you don't write for the outcome or what may be. You just write because you enjoy writing and you enjoy being a better writer, and that in turn will obviously lead to better outcomes later on. But if you try to reverse that outlook, or if you try to focus on that outcome and not the actual process, you're just going to hate the entire process the whole time,
Yeah. So. And you just grow frustrated. The best example I think is actually it's like in muscle growth. In that muscle growth comes in spurts, doesn't it? Like any of us can attest to the fact that you can be going months and months eating all these calories, getting all these progressions in your logbook, and nothing is changing in your scale weight, your physique. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you might get a bit of growth. But the key word there is you might, because it's not really in your hands, is it? It's in your genetics hands, and how responsible you are for muscle growth. Some people have genetics which are very generous to them, and some people have genetics which aren't at all. But if you're obsessed with how the genetics are going to treat your muscle growth, you're just going to grow increasingly frustrated. And what will happen then is you start jumping from plan to plan. You start thinking, in many cases, you start thinking, oh, maybe I need to use some extra supplements, i.e. steroids, which is one of the reasons why people jump on that bandwagon, because they don't have joy in the mundane day to day of just turning up and doing the work.
Yeah.
No, I think it links really nicely into what we said about genetics, because it is just focusing on, if you spend all your time just worrying about your genetic limit or whether you can hit it, you're never just going to enjoy the process of getting there. Whereas as long as you're enjoying that day to day, ticking the boxes, you're going to be making progress towards it without having to worry and where that limit is. The progress is always going to be better in the end, and you're going to have a more enjoyable journey as well.
And finding joy in the day to day takes you away from that shiny object. And one of the biggest ones over this time of the year is the whole food porn thing. Because of Christmas and because it's January, everyone's looking for some tasty recipes to kickstart their new diet. And what you end up getting sucked into is all this whole crazy food porn business that you get on, especially on Instagram, because Instagram is very visual, and people will create food porn just to draw people in, and it just feeds into that culture of, oh, let me try that, or let me try this, or maybe that will make the day-to-day more interesting, or maybe that will be the answer to why I've not got into shape or stayed in shape. Maybe I need to make my food look so sexy that I just want to stare at it rather than eat it.
But it's a legit thing these days, and there are people making a lot of money from presentation. There are even food manufacturers. But again, trust me to get into this weird little rabbit hole. But have you guys heard of this? It's like a thing where people actually just sit down on YouTube and watch people eat. It's called Mukbang. It's called it's originated from originated or some Asian country where it's like the practice of just watching people eat food. And
Mukbang.
you look at it, it's called Mukbang or MUK. And the thing is, when you look at, because this is when I was doing my research into competitive eaters, so I wanted to see how their metabolism.
Just doing some research, yeah.
Yeah, just some research. But the thing is, you would see these competitive eaters, and their views would just be through the roof. You know what I mean? And the thing is, they do these food challenges for the views. And even in our field and AV, I'm sure you've seen people who are prepping for a diet, or they do their cheat days or whatever it is, and people just watch those days. They watch those videos. And those videos get the most views. I've even heard a few YouTubers say they throw them days in just so they can get views, which is pretty sad. It's like a currency now, and they're jeopardizing their own health, and they're jeopardizing their own well-being just to get more views, which is pretty messed up, right? But yeah, back to this whole mukbang thing. It's people love watching people eat, which is really, really strange, and apparently there is an evolutionary tie to that back in the day, because back in the day food was rare. It wasn't surrounded all the time, and this is a very new phenomenon now, which the food industry is capitalizing on, which I'm sure we've spoken about before. But there is this innate. And this is why food porn appeals to a lot of people too. People get off by watching an egg, the yolk thing where people
yolk porn.
And the yolk oozes onto whatever food it is, and everyone's just it's not this. It's literally sexualizing food. You know what I mean? It's really, really weird. But people still watch these things, and it's a very, very strange science once you get into it. It's insane.
Chocolate's another one as well. People will show how chocolate melts and then drizzle it, get people drooling.
And stuff,
And you said people get off on it. And I just got to say, I've just Googled mukbang, and I've just come up with the most crazy videos. Just I just typed in mukbang. I got 5 mukbang YouTube viral stars you need to be watching, and all I can see is these. It looks like it's a Korean thing, and it just plates of even kimchi. There's a kimchi. How much kimchi can you eat? I didn't even know that.
So there's a caveat. It's the overconsumption of food. It's not just people eating a normal meal. It's people overdoing it, and people love seeing that for some weird reason. Yeah.
But if you look, actually, a lot of bodybuilders and stuff, when putting out a lot of content, obviously to try and bring in money, and a lot of them are doing 10K, 10,000 calorie a day challenges. I think because that's almost become a norm now. People are stepping up to try and attempt 20,000. And I've heard them say they're the best kind of views they're getting. And if you look at loads of bodybuilders or influencers in the fitness industry, it's not uncommon at all for them to have publicized some kind of eating challenge. And also, I know I've heard, these kind of people talk as well about the videos that get the most watch are when they talk through their day of eating. It's not, the training videos get some, whatever else, but then it's the ones where they're talking through what they're eating each day, which people just seem to absolutely love. And the views for those are massively above anything else on there, which I think just backs up how interested everyone else is in, or how interested everyone is in everyone else's diets.
I always get people requesting, can you do a cooking video of your chicken curry? Like, can you just put a camera in front of your kitchen and just talk us through your chicken curry? And I don't know. I just find it. I find it strange as well. And I've seen that as well, where the bodybuilders, like, there's bodybuilding videos where like people love watching other bodybuilders go through the supermarkets.
Yeah.
They love watching people shop for food. Because they couldn't just write it down as a list of here's my food list. They wanted to see people actually watching, go and get their food.
Yeah, but we've all done it too, for some weird reason as well. We've watched those vids.
Yeah.
and we've never known why. Like, I've never left one of those videos and been like, oh, I learned something there.
Yeah. As if the way they pick their eggs up and put them in the trolley is different or makes a difference. Like,
no. What do you think? So the psychology on this is interesting though, because it's like there's a whole it's a $1 billion thing, right? This whole thing, it's huge, and I think it's a big part of why people just don't stay in shape.
Massive. The food environment is not conducive for being in shape. Like, it is an absolute miracle that not everyone in this world is actually obese. We are heading that way, but yeah, it's insane. It's incredible. We have all the odds stacked up against us when it comes to that thing. Hyper-palatable foods at every corner. Do
you think that seeing all of these videos and what everyone else is eating the whole time is what's generating this kind of FOMO, like fear of missing out mentality around food though? Because you used to just eating whatever your nutritional strategy is or whatever, but your routine with eating, and then you go on Instagram and you see this different meal or this out there thing, and you feel like, oh, I need to have that to, just to experience it or whatever. But because this is happening so regularly, it's just meaning that people are constantly in this mindset the whole time.
The funny thing is, a lot of these food porn things, especially when it's a healthy food porn, it doesn't even taste that great. Yeah, you're better off probably just having the real thing. And in more cases than not, there are actually probably less calories than the actual healthy version.
Yeah. There's two options. It's either more calories than the original option, or it tastes worse, or third option, both, or it just tastes like crap and is actually more calories as well.
But it's homemade, and I use it using organic coconut flour and organic almond meal and organic dates and organic cocoa powder.
And 7 avocados.
And dark chocolate, and peanut butter, and...
It's really low sugar, but the fats are about 100 grams per portion, right?
But it's low sugar, right? Yeah, you're fine.
Low sugar, it's organic, it's healthy.
Yeah.
That calorie dichotomy is interesting. And just so we've spoken a lot about food in the last couple of podcasts. One thing we were talking about over Christmas, which I think is quite interesting, is we talk about the physical being the vehicle for the greater good in life. But there's also another element to crutches that I don't think we've discussed yet, in that the physical can also be a crutch. And everything you do on this journey can actually be a crutch if approached in the wrong way, which is something that's it's against everything we speak about, but it can go down that way. And it's important to differentiate between the two. So let's dive into knowing the differences between the two. And if you are sort of finding yourself in that way, how to come out of it accordingly. Because ultimately it's the same thing as using food as a crutch, TV, shopping, or whatever it may be.
Anything can be a crutch. Anything, in my opinion, can be a crutch if perceived in the wrong way. The way I would look at a crutch or define a crutch is something that is giving you a short-term distraction that is not giving you the capacity to deal with what you need to deal with, if that makes sense. So that way, like the way we use the physical is the vehicle, or the way I use the physical as a vehicle is, yes, I love exercise, I love being active, I love all those things, but I'm not doing those things to run away from an issue. You know what I mean? What I have found personally is that that time that you spend for yourself, that introspection, that reflection, getting your heart rate up, getting all those endorphins cranking, gives you ample time to think, gives you ample time to come up with a solution to what needs to be addressed in your life for you to keep moving forward. So there's a difference between using that physical exercise and capacity to help you solve future problems versus just running away from your problems and just engulfing yourself in exercise and getting lean to escape the realities of life, and which is fundamentally what anorexia is. You know, when you think about it, that's what anorexia is. It's this complete control of this one area of your life, but everything else suffers, everything. But you have this control over one thing. And that's a huge difference, right? Because if we look at it, if we look at it from like an objective thing, it's like, oh wow, that person is, you know, counting their calories, they're training hard, they're not overeating, they're definitely not binging, especially if they're anorexic. Now, okay, wow, you literally skin and bones. You know, technically they've done all the things that allow someone to get lean, but look, they have used all that to destroy them, you know, versus, you know, most people that we take on through this journey, the physical transformation they go through and the emotional, spiritual, all those other great transformations happen as a consequence of that. That is the difference. You know, it's using the physical to help you in other areas of your life, not just using the physical and then just hiding away from everything. That's definitely not the right way to approach it, in my opinion.
I think that's where the physical as a vehicle can be applied to any situation, because it's using the physical as a vehicle to improve all areas of your life, not just looking at it as a way to improve fat loss or to help you lose body fat. And this is where, if you are overweight, if you're underweight, if you have issues with control around food or any other area of your life, you can use the physical as a vehicle to help you with that, because it's not specific to a certain goal. It's just using the physical to help you in those other areas, however that is. So that's why there is no set plan for it. There's no, you know, RNT way or anything like that. It's using the principles of taking control of your physical to help you in whatever areas you want to or need to focus on.
That's why staying in shape is not about staying super lean. It's just having a healthy control and healthy intention of how you manage your body composition. And that's the signal for being in shape for life, is that you're probably being in shape for life is probably not going to be the same condition as you were in the shape of your life. It's probably two different things. Being in the shape of your life is probably where you're leanest. The shape for life is where you feel best and where you perform best. Yes. And there's a big differentiator. Yes. For some people that might be 2 or 3 kilos above your leanest, like yourself, Ivan. For others, it might be like 10 kilos above your leanest, like for myself. Yeah. And 10 kilos, just in perspective, that's about 10 to 12% above my leanest. Ivan is probably a couple percent. Ed, I don't know if you think you're around the same as me, aren't you? Like, you feel better, a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'm about 12 kilos above where I'd probably, you know, like photo shoot wise, you know, look my best. But my relationship with food at the moment is the best it's ever been. Energy levels are good, training performance is good, mood's good, sleep's good. All of these kind of physiological and psychological factors are all in a great place with relation to that. And so just for operating in all areas of my life, being those 12 kilos heavier is definitely beneficial for me. It also, I think, just gives you the balance that you want in life. And this is going to be different for everyone, but you need to understand how much activity you want to be doing, how much food you want to be eating each day, how much flexibility with those things you want. And then factor in, because, you know, if you think, oh, I might want to be 1-2 kilos above photo shoot shape, but if you want to not track over the weekends, eat family meals every night, and that's not to say that those things have to cause fat gain, but if you're going to have a bit more flexibility, there needs to be a bit more room for error within that. And so maybe just having a slightly higher kind of settling point is going to work better for you. I find the amount of food and the flexibility that I can have with food works really well for me at the moment in my lifestyle. So if I was going to try and maintain 10 kilos lighter, I would really struggle with that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's a big difference there, right? It's a big difference between getting in shape for a photo, which is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's a great way to challenge yourself. But to put this unnecessary pressure on yourself, thinking that you have to stay there, otherwise you failed, is completely false. That is completely false, because there's a huge difference between that and being in a shape for life, which is finding that perfect blend of how you look, how you perform, how you function, and how the physical literally is the vehicle for everything else. There is no point of you looking fantastic with veins all over you for a day or for whatever, but feeling absolutely miserable, not being able to serve others, not being able to do anything else but take a couple selfies a day. That's not shape for life. That is just stupid. I mean, like, that's not what we advocate at all. It's about finding what is ideal for you on all fronts. And that does include being comfortable with how you feel and how you look, and that is all subjective. And as Ed said, it's all very very environmental too. You know what I mean? Like, again, my specific environment could change in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, or my priorities can completely shift. And then my weight could go up, or it could go up, it could go down, do whatever, based on what happens around my life and what I want to prioritize as I get older. And that's also just an ever-evolving, moving target too.
It's also important that it's an honest approach to being in shape for life, in that you don't just say to yourself, okay, I don't need to be in amazing shape, so I'll stay comfortable at a high body fat and just be, in fact, out of shape. So you need to know the whole continuum. That's why it's useful to actually get into the shape of your life. So then and then reverse out of it and find your sweet spot. Because if you're going down, you don't really know where the sweet spot is, because every time you go down, it's a new territory. When you're coming up, you can understand how you feel at each point and where you function best. And what might end up happening, let's say you go all the way down, let's say you go from 90 to 70, you might find on the way up, you feel 70 to 72, you're still feeling kind of rough, 72, 75, still there. And then you start feeling better at 76, 78, you test the waters a little bit higher, and you feel even better, test the waters even higher, and suddenly it's like, I feel a bit lethargic, I feel a bit out of breath, don't feel as good anymore. All right, let me go down a bit and hold it there. And that's the way you find it. What you don't want to do is just is not pay attention to that and just think, this is just an excuse to hold high levels of body fat just because it's easier. But it's not actually serving you in a good way.
I think that's a very good point. You have to go to the extreme to know. You need that reference, and then you can work your way up. Because you're right. You don't know what you don't know, so to speak. So.
And then in that, you've got to just on the point of crutches and why the exercise can be a form of crutch. It's ultimately it's not dealing with your shit. It's not facing it. And we've all you hear the stories of people that do extreme endurance events or exercise events, or people that may not ever want to weigh themselves because they're always lean and think that's a good thing as well. And ultimately, while on the outside, it can seem as like, they must have a really good relationship with themselves because they don't need to weigh themselves, or they must be really healthy because they do a lot of exercise. But the reality is, it's all just an escape away from the muck that they haven't faced. Whether that's a trauma from the younger days, or whether it's just an experience they've not dealt with and processed effectively. These are all the things which they're just feeding the muck in a different way than the traditional manner. Most people typically do it with food or binging or in some form, but exercise can be done in that same way, or even just having control of your body composition can be the same thing.
There's a really good example. Actually, there's a lady who's what are they called? Like Tough Mudders and Spartan races. They're obstacle racers. She's one of the best in the world. I think she's called Amelia Boom. She's I think she came third in the world toughest mudder across both genders, I think. So she's really good endurance athlete. I think she's a lawyer for Apple as well. So really high performer kind of in all areas of her life. And she's someone I was following on Instagram. And she recently, or maybe a few months ago, actually came out and said that she'd been struggling with an eating disorder for virtually her whole life. But because she had put up here and there, her having an ice cream or whatever, as well as her performing so well in all these different areas of life, at least on social media, you would never have been able to pick up on it at all. But then, she was very brave and kind of opened up about it. But it was quite clear that she had been using this intense training as a crutch for that. And, she was going, obviously, with her disciplines, going on really long runs, training really frequently. But that was obviously a crutch for her to control, her eating disorders and use that to kind of cover it up.
Usually comes from I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if she explained why she has that, but it wouldn't be surprised if it was like some level of extreme trauma from back in the day that she just not processed properly. Because almost in all cases, it comes down to something like that, especially if they've held on to it for so long, and it's not even potentially visible because physically she looks like she's got everything in order, but when it's not visible, there's just something she's just not dealing with and hasn't yet processed, and that's really, really hard. Because it's not a case of just identifying it. You've just actually got to work through it and actually become neutral around the whole situation. And only you can do that. You can't rely on someone else to guide you through there. Yeah, you can talk to someone about it and all these sorts of things, but ultimately you've got to have the responsibility to do it yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes you may even not know what that was, right? You could just be acting in a subconscious way for a long time, and then all of a sudden something clicks. And then you're like, holy shit, did that happen to me? Or you hear about cases like that happening all the time where people can't remember like a specific event back in the day or whatever it is, but then something just triggers them out of nowhere, and it's just like, whoa, okay, what caused someone to react that badly to something? Always think, when someone is triggered by something that may seem like innocuous or it may seem just like a normal part, it may seem very like insignificant, right, to someone who hasn't experienced something, and they just get completely triggered by it. I think people, anything that triggers you in that sort of visceral way, I think is most of the time a reflection of something that's happened to you personally or something that you're dealing with. But yeah, it's interesting, very interesting.
I think though that the lockdown could be a really great time for people to explore this, because with well, at least the UK being in lockdown anyway, with gyms being closed, although all exercise isn't taken off the table, that escape to the gym or that different place to exercise is almost being removed, and so it really does test us in terms of what we're wanting to get out of our sessions. And whether getting to the gym is a crutch. And I think it's a good time to reflect on that, because you can now see, I personally, I don't enjoy training at home as much as I do in the gym, but you can then think about, why are you still training at home then? What are you trying to get out of it? Is it that that feeling, whether it's physical or mental? Is it a crutch or whatever it is? I think it's a good chance for us all just to look into what we're trying to get out of our sessions, because often we can think, I just want bigger arms or stronger squat or whatever. But I think you can then start to peel back the layers a bit more when it's in this kind of situation.
I remember in the last lockdown for me, I kind of realized that how much of an anchor it is for me. Especially at the beginning of lockdown, where I was kind of a bit all over the place, didn't have my usual routine of training. And I just realized then, I was like, it's just a way to kind of anchor the day. It's a time, like you said, Ivan, like time to think, time to process, just reset yourself and almost like put yourself in the best possible position to do everything else you want to do. I think that really came to light on the last lockdown in March 2020. So, but I think it's a valid point you make, because there is an element to kind of chasing that void for other reasons. We talk about the void in a positive sense, but we can chase that void in a negative sense as well, because you just want to get away from everything, and it can become a real escape.
100%. Yeah.
And you said that. Oh no, go on.
I was going to say, I have stumbled on like a little bit of research as of late. Again, it's more like theoretical stuff, but I do like the theoretical stuff a lot more than other things. And there was this psychiatrist who deals with people that have had traumatic events, and when it comes to exercise, because the physical response to trauma can be very, very similar to hard exercise. You know what I mean? That elevated heart rate, the stress response, right? The extreme stress response. And we have spoken about how exercise can make you better at dealing with stress, because it puts you in that physiological state a lot of the time. And then you're able to think, you're able to control that state because it's voluntary. with people who have trauma, getting to that place, either from it's like subconsciously, like they don't want to get there because they don't want to replicate that feeling of trauma, of actual trauma, right? And I think this could be a potential link. This is what I've just maybe come up with, is people who struggle to enter the void, or people that struggle to get to that next level of intensity, are like scared to do so because their brain is just saying, no, we don't want to go here. Remember last time we went here, what happened? You know, just on a really deep fundamental level. And I think, you know, when people are like, well, I don't know what the void is, I don't know how to get there, what do you mean? And I think that could be part of it too. But then on the flip side, there are people who enter that void because they just want to feel nothing, or they just want to feel numb. Do you know what I mean? So it's like this catch-22 of some people run into it because they feel safe there, yet are still traumatized, while the others are just trying to avoid that state completely because it's scary, you know?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It'd be interesting to know what the theory behind why someone would choose one or the other in a traumatized state is. You know, you said earlier, like when it all clicks all of a sudden. I think you get a lot of that when you do push to that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It starts, the things start bubbling, right? Things that the subconscious behaviors you didn't know were there all start coming out when you're pushing towards that extreme, which is why I think there's a value in the extreme, because you really restrict a lot of other pleasures in your life. And because of that, you have to, like, all these things that you were using subconsciously or not are now not, you can't use them.
Yeah, but when you think of that period where you are pushing the extreme, you have to remove so many of the most common crutches, whether it's drinking alcohol in excess, binge eating, just resorting to comfort food. You are spending more time either on your own or at least just without distraction, whether it's doing cardio or walking, and so you have no choice really than to face the actual issues, that the underlying issues that those crutches are trying to cover up, which for many people is the first time in their lives they've had to do that, which I think is why it can be so enlightening in other areas as well as just the physical.
And in a lot of cases, it's to do with their work, it's to do with their relationships, it's to do with relationships either in a romantic or even just in a family sense, or things that they haven't come across. And all these things come to light. And then it's like, okay, what's the action you got to take? Oh, that's scary. Now I've actually got to act on it. And this is where the whole thing we started talking about today is around the self-help thing, is that when you're in that position of like, okay, now I've identified it, now I've actually got to quit something. I've got to change my career. I've got to quit my career and do something else, or I've got to quit a relationship. I've got to have a difficult conversation. All these suddenly like really difficult things come into place. And then it's like, actually, let me go to that self-help course next week. That'll tell me what to do. Or let me read another book and just get a bit more information on it. Or let me, waiting for the clearing when it's never going to arrive. And then what ends up happening is you quit the idea of quitting. The whole idea of quitting, which is so exciting, and it's like, this is finally going to solve the issues. And in most cases, it actually probably will. But now you quit the whole idea of actually quitting the things that you should be quitting. And then you just end up in a perpetual vicious circle where you don't actually deal with the issue. And
no.
I think this is where a lot of the problems sort of come in the world that we have right now. And this is not us speaking from a high horse either. It's just like we all fall for this, right? It's very easy to have the idea of quitting something, but actually quitting whatever that may be. It could be a habit, it could be a relationship, it could be a career, or whatever. It's very difficult. And we face that fear as humans, don't we? It's a very innate feeling as a human because we built a survival mechanism around that.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very easy also just to read self-help books or listen to those kind of podcasts, and you almost get an immediate gratification because you feel like you're doing something positive for yourself and you feel like you are taking action. Whereas in reality, it's just you're potentially introspecting, but you're not actually just reading the book isn't pairing it with action. And as we always say, introspection plus action equals transformation. And so the introspection part can be really easy and make you feel good and as if you're doing something. And like I went for a big period when I think I read like every Tim Ferriss book out there. And like there's nothing against him or his work, but unless it's paired with action, it's literally just reading and just thoughts. And then I was listening to loads of podcasts. In reality, I wasn't really making any changes to my life because I wasn't pairing it with action. And this is where having potentially some rules or adding some accountability to the changes that you want to make, whether that's with yourself or with a coach or peers, and enforcing action to come with it is the only way that change is actually going to occur. Because like I said, the just introspecting is mental masturbation. Really, it's not going to create any actual change.
Reality is you've got to keep yourself accountable, haven't you? You've got to really own it yourself. Like you can't even rely on someone else in this sort of arena. I think all you can do is own it yourself, and then what can help is having peers who are trying to do the same thing with you. If you're relying on like someone else to guide you through this path, it takes us back to the beginning of this conversation whereby they won't have the answers for you. Only you have the answers to deal with this. Someone can tell you but it comes back to, instead of listening to a podcast, you're now listening to someone else. Even now, like someone might be listening to this thinking, getting all excited about dealing with the muck and quitting the idea, but it's the same thing here. Like,
just about to say that. Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Don't just get inspired.
Yeah, you listen to this podcast. Yeah, you listen to this podcast. You're all entertained. You're like, agree. You're the exact same person that we are talking about. I was listening to this. The thing is though, we are in the same category. Like we are not self-help gurus. We are not your gods. We are not anything like that. We are here to help you discover your own strength. That's the way I see my job anyway, is people, we get a lot of thanks and we get a lot of praise for the jobs that we do, which again, we have transformed a lot of people's lives, but technically we haven't. We have shown them the way, or we have shown them a way for them to discover their own transformation. When you really think about it, that's what I think our job is. I'm sure you guys agree with that too. But yeah, it's not about, us being superior and, we are your superiors and you are inferiors. You listen to us because we are coaches, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not the case at all. And yeah, I've had a few clients that I've worked with who they've been lapping up the book. They've listened to your book 2-3 times already. They can memorize pretty much like paragraph for paragraph everything that's said, but every week it's still the same issue that isn't being resolved. And it's like, listening to your podcast, awesome, great information. Every week nothing changes though. Nothing changes. And again, if you find that you yourself are in this loop of just listening and absorbing, not even absorbing, just listening passively, because that's what's happening. Because if you're not taking action on what you're listening to, you're just being passive. So, and if you're just listening and if you're just nodding along but not really taking an action, then you're going to be in the same spot you are in 2022, January 4th, January 5th. Today. So but yeah, it's you need to hold yourself accountable to all this. This is your own. We are here to help you, but we can't do the work for you. No one can.
And that's where I think it's also important to look at the principles, but then apply it to you, because the principle of physical as the vehicle, like I said, can be applied to anything. And then it's understanding what you then want to use that to do. Because I think so often, and I'm probably you guys have had it as well with people, setting new targets for New Year and stuff. It's really common for people to feel like they should have certain things as goals, whether it is weight loss, but other people, really common ones I've had is, limiting screen time. I want to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I want to do this or whatever. And it's almost like these generic goals that we're seeing maybe from media and things like that are things that we have to do. Whereas in reality, we need to find what is important to us and what we actually want to achieve, because unless it is important to us and it's going to help us with our lives, then you're never going to actually commit to doing it. So making sure that you're finding the goals that you want and then using the principles of, say, physical as a vehicle to then apply it to you.
There's a chapter I wrote in this chapter I wrote in the book I'm writing now. It's called "The World is Conspiring Against Us." Because when you put it like that, it literally, it's trying to dictate your own life, isn't it? And it's, our virtual environment is so conducive to creating these perceptions that you must follow. That's another term I wrote when I wrote this book, is virtual environment. And Ivan, you don't know when I dropped that, didn't you? But it's the one that we forget, and the one that we have to probably curate more than ever. Because in the more connected world we live in, if we don't control our virtual environment, it will control you on a subconscious level, and you will start making these goals that Ed just said without even realizing, like, why do I want to get up at 5 a.m. or why do I want to work on my fitness this year, or why do I want to do this, for example. So I think it's important you curate your environment, and you remember who's in control of everything you're doing. And more than anything, I think if there's one message you get from today, it's around responsibility of this whole thing. You don't just listen to this podcast, actually act on it. It's probably a lot of like subconscious thoughts you're going to have around what we're discussing today. It's going to make you think, oh, should I do that? Should I do this? But in a couple of days' time, you might forget all about it, and you're in that perpetual circle again. Then you see someone else's self-help post, and you think, let me lap myself into that for a bit.
You just start watching food porn again. You're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Go on to Mukbang.com.
Yeah. I guarantee everyone's doing that after this podcast, isn't it? That's what's really happening.
No one's even got this far. As soon as that, they just paused it and just went on.
To be honest, I'm going to go check it out after this as well. I've got to see what this is. I'm curious to know what this is all about.
Gained 5 kilos in 1 week.
Well, when I did type it in earlier, I saw it says something like, the secret is to eat once and then don't eat again for a couple of days. Something like that. Like, that's how these people maintain their lifestyle.
I think a lot of the competitive eaters will basically fast for a couple of days or just eat really lightly. And then obviously smash a ridiculous amount of food.
And a lot of them actually do a lot of exercise as well. They actually, a lot of the best ones, the best competitive eaters are actually super thin. They're actually like incredibly thin, because from my understanding and from my research, the thing is, when you have like a lot of adipose tissue around your stomach, it actually can't expand as much compared to when you're like a little bit leaner. So their capacity to handle like a big meal is better when you're leaner.
Is this what you've been doing all along? This is why you're staying lean, because you've actually been doing mukbang for the last 2 years.
I'm doing food comps. But you look at all the best competitive eaters in the world, and they're all like tiny. Like, there's one lady, I'm sure everyone will look this up now, the Black Widow. Like, look her up. It's actually insane how much food she can stomach. So, but yeah.
I don't know if I've got the right one. I think something just come out in the UK. The moment ex-husband of Black Widow learns she tried to manipulate other men into murdering him. So I don't know if she's
that's the one.
There's also a couple of films on it. So let me type in Black Widow food.
Competitive eater.
Black Widow is also a spider. So here we go. Yeah, Sonia Thomas. Here she is. Yeah, she's tiny.
Yeah.
She's also South Korean.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
But yeah, they do a heap of activity, and they even they won't eat for days on end. But the thing is, they can't eat zero because the stomach shrinks as well. So it's like you have to. It's very strategic, but again, long term health wise, nobody knows what the hell's going on there. But it's just like any sport, any extreme endeavor. You know, you're pushing the limit, you're gonna run into issues later on. And that goes for football, that goes for gym, that goes for anything taken to the absolute extreme. Yeah.
The Black Widow is the number 4 of all time impressive competitive eaters. She weighs 100 pounds. But she can eat 10 pounds of deep fried okra in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's insane. It's insane what happens, but yeah, don't try that at home.
I think as soon as you attach any kind of competitiveness around eating, whether it's like competitive eating directly, or even, if you take bodybuilding to an extreme where eating is a big component of the, how competitive you are, the chance of then running into relationship issues with food just increases more and more. And this is where, doing these kind of things might sound funny, or, I'm sure, you'll get loads of likes and views if you do video or whatever. But ultimately, these are the kind of things that create terrible habits and relationships with food that will not serve you well in the long term at all. And, as much as these people, I'm sure, are getting paid, money on YouTube for these videos, I'm sure behind closed doors, their relationship with food is not in a good place.
I mean, this one guy here, number 2, Matt Stoney, he's eaten 182 bacon strips in 5 minutes and 255 marshmallow peeps in 5 minutes. And then there's an advert below with a link to a video saying, "Will Matt Stoney eat the entire KFC menu in 10 minutes?" Of course you're going to click that, aren't you? You're going to be like, did he?
I'm going to watch it after this. But yeah, it's insane, right? But yeah, and again, like if you look at his views, probably I think he's one of the most watched YouTubers in all like genres, in anything.
I mean, check this out for the world. This guy, the number 1 guy, apparently the GOAT, Joey Chestnut, he's got 43 world records. The big one apparently is 182 chicken wings in 30 minutes flat. And that's 20. And then another one actually he's done 74 hot dogs in 10 minutes. And that's 22,000 calories in 10 minutes. That's 1,332 grams of fat in 10 minutes. 1,800 carbs.
Yeah,
how do you even get that bread down you by the end? You know what I mean? Like,
you don't. The thing is, but you don't. Like, there are people who open up about the world a little bit, and they say that a lot of them you can't keep the food down. So you have to keep it down until like the judges are like, yeah, you got it. But then, like, what happens an hour or two later? Many of them do. It's either goes out that way or it goes out the other way. Especially if you're eating like 1,000 grams of fat in one hit, like. But there's only so much your body can actually just digest from that. It's going to a lot of it is going to be expelled, but you are still going to absorb a lot of that. So don't try it at home. Don't think that if you eat 20k calories, you're going to be, I just poop all of it out. No, you might poop out maybe like 2,000 cal if you're lucky, but you're still going to be storing 18,000.
Yeah. I've sent you guys a link. It's twistedfood.co.uk / these are the world's top 7 most impressive competitive eaters. So anyone listening, go type something like that in Google and go check that article out. It's insane.
You really see the wording of that. Impressive. Yeah. You see that?
Yeah, yeah.
It's word. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, they talk about it like they talk about it literally like it's a sport. I mean, they got title belts. You look at it, it's like wrestling. They got the title, they call it the arena. This person entered the arena.
They've got their names, isn't it? The Black Widow. That sounds like a wrestler kind of name, isn't
it? Yeah.
Serious problem. It just comes. I think we as a society, we like watching these sorts of things because, like, You Being Framed and all these sorts of things, like, or Takashi's Castle. Like, I love watching that kind of stuff, don't we?
I love those shows. My wife hates them. She gets so annoyed. But like Total Wipeout. I love that stuff.
Yeah, or like a lot of us love watching like weird, dark, twisted like murders and stuff on TV, right? We all get in like interested in these stories of people doing like insane things. Like, how can someone do that? Like at the moment I'm watching Zodiac. I don't know if you guys seen that. It's like this. It's about the serial killer who they haven't actually caught him yet as well. He's still not been caught to this day. But just watching him unfold and watching all the stuff that he was doing, like, it's absolutely twisted. Like, there was this one scene where he was driving with a lady next to him that he usually picked her up as a hitchhiker, and just casually like this is like, before I kill you, I'm gonna throw your baby out the window. That sort of like insanity, right? Oh no, how twisted is that? In just a cold, like, no emotion, no nothing sort of dialogue. But we all watch that stuff. We all find it extremely fascinating, for some reason, even though we'll never be that person, hopefully not.
It's probably the human psyche. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it's that fascination of how can someone think like that? Mental.
What do you think the human psyche behind food porn is then? Like, not competitive eating, but food porn.
Yeah, well, from food porn, I think again, as I'm saying, it comes from like this deep evolutionary drive to eat, right?
Yeah.
Just with anything taken to the extreme. So same as like regular porn, whatever that means these days, it's taking something that we find fundamental to like survival and just exploiting the hell out of it. You know, I think the same has been said for food, and they have been like, yeah, they've been food has become more sexualized, especially with Instagram, especially with people making their food appear to be incredible. Even fast food places, they will get people there. There's an actual job where people's occupation is to make food look amazing on billboards and like touch it up, and they don't even use actual. Really?
Yeah, she did. She worked for, I think it was Sainsbury's for a bit, and there was like, I can't remember the exact the job title, but it was like she had to design. It was as if she was a makeup artist or like a wardrobe manager, but for food, for the adverts. So like for Sainsbury's sandwiches. I know McDonald's have it really big as well, because you know how on the McDonald's burger, it always looks like it's just like all the like the fillings are like overflowing. It's so big. But they'll like position it all at like, sometimes in the photo of like on an advert, the back of the burger won't have, like the back of the bun won't have a burger in it, but everything else is just so pushed to the front, and it's all done so well. Because then, like if you ever see one in real life, you're like, oh, that's like a lot less impressive. But it's because they dress it up and spruce it up as much as possible.
It's like real life.
Yeah. Well, that's why when you see things, when you see these like food porn on Instagram, when you try and make it yourself, it never looks the same.
No.
Because also the camera quality and all these sorts of things play into it.
Yeah, it's a big industry, man. Because remember, Instagram it's all visual, right? So whatever's gonna allow you to stop and watch, that's the goal. Yeah.
But I think also just with social media, everything's almost become a competition in all areas of life, I think. And I think food's just another avenue for people to show that their food's tastier or whatever it is. And it's just another way to self-promote, I guess, isn't it?
Food's tastier than yours.
Yeah.
Scary stuff.
That's a wrap.
I think I was just going to say, as a takeaway, maybe I would just say, if you are struggling with fat loss or relationship with food or anything, following these food porn accounts is not going to serve you well at all. So just I don't follow any of them, and maybe some adverts will come up now and then, but you're in control of the people you let into your social media. So that's something I would definitely take control of for sure.
Just on that, when you get to the point in a dieting phase where you suddenly start looking at all these things, you're probably going to set yourself up for a really bad rebound after. I remember in 2014 when I had my really bad rebound, all I was looking at was food. I was looking at all the different things I was going to have.
Up a dessert bar.
Yeah, I was going to open up a dessert bar. I mean, you could that was that was the absolute probably extreme. I was literally like,
that was prior to Instagram.
Yeah, prior to Instagram, I was in dessert lounges thinking about their business models, thinking about what capital I need to start it, how much we need to make a first profit, looking at menus. I was literally drooling over all the different designs that you have. I had a taster session booked in. Like it was just so if you find that's probably to the extreme. But if you find like now, if you find yourself looking at food channels and all that sort of stuff when you're dieting, like turn that shit off, because that's going to really make it hard for you after. And it's probably sending a subconscious message that you've got a relationship with food issue that's coming your way if you don't address it now. So take that stuff off and unfollow all these people.
Before my unsuccessful consolidation a few years ago, I was just back to back watching Jamie Oliver's 15-minute meals. And it's like, it's not even like now I would never bother watching it. It's like, it's a load of rubbish. But I was just watching, back to all these ingredients I've never even heard of, never used. But I was just watching them, like literally just one after another, just because that food focus was so high. And I can tell you for sure, it didn't work out well for me.
I think another topic that we can discuss later on would be just these cooking shows in general, like their dishes. Everything's going to taste good when you put 10 liters of olive oil into an omelette,
Yeah,
have you seen these people make these dishes?
Yeah. This starts
Like-
off with like they cut half the slab of butter and they just throw it on, let that sizzle through, and they zoom into the sizzling, and you're thinking,
just a slither of butter. What? Oh.
yeah, there's 1,000 calories. And then we'll
Actually, before we head off, yeah, that's where the whole mukbang trend started. Initially from cooking shows in like the 70s and 80s. That's where it started. People would come to these like shows of cooking, people cooking on stage. Everyone's like cheering and cheering, you know, like it's an actual event. Oh fuck!
I think we're all going to be looking at mukbang.
Who's the female chef in the UK? I've forgotten her name now. She like is like really sexualized food.
Is it Nigella or something?
Yeah. Nigella Lawson, isn't that? Yeah. I think she's like was probably the transition making cooking sexy.
Yeah, she was big. I think is she still big?
Yeah, I think. Bigger around the
just released a new
middle-aged man scene, maybe.
Yeah, she just released a new book and a new TV show around signature comfort food.
The world is conspiring against us.
I mean, they've got she's got an article in the Guardian. I think she's embraced the solo lockdown, so I'm assuming it's to do with the breakup, and now she's come back with new signature food. So, yeah, the world is conspiring against us. All right, that's a wrap, guys.